Hey everybody, thanks for joining. We're gonna get started here shortly. We're just tracking down we have Ray here. We're tracking down his counterpart Alex. The way we normally do this is we'll do about the first 20 or 25 minutes. I have like a set of questions. Me, Ray, Alex, probably Zach will just I'll ask them and we'll have a conversation about it. And then feel free to put questions in the chat and we'll use the rest of the time for question and answer time. Okay, I think we'll just go ahead and kick off. So, Ray, why don't you talk to us about Foxtrot and what it is, and then we'll kind of start going into some of these questions here.
Sure. Just Alex will be here in a minute. We both ran into this weird issue where we have to create a new Zoom account to get in. So, Foxtrot, it's a small like boutique Palantir consultancy. So, there's a lot of former Palantirians there. It's like a point of pride for them. And then anyone that's not is for the most part former DoD or at least federal. And yeah, we go around to different organizations, private and public, and we help them with their Palantir implementations, either establishing new solutions, putting them in place, or helping them maintain what they have. But there's a heavy bias toward creating new solutions and kind of putting them in place. It's not really an organization where they try to latch onto an organization for a decade. It's more give them the tools they need to succeed with this Palantir, solution that they have, and then, move on to the next thing.
Yeah, it's super interesting to see like that being used as, almost like a new form of, consulting, right? In the sense that you're coming in, but you actually have some like really powerful tools other than just like PowerPoint and Excel. We had a webinar with Palantir about a month ago, but I don't know how many of these folks would have been in that webinar. So why don't you give a quick overview of like what when you do an implementation like that, like what exactly does that look like?
So first off, for anyone that doesn't know, Palantir, it's a platform, right? So it gets like a weird rap in the news because of some of the applications that it's used for, but it's no different than like Microsoft Power Platform or something like that in the sense that like it's just a set of tools. So what we do with Palantir, like for an implementation, we do everything. It's a full service situation, right? The platform is all encompassing, which is one of the things that makes it really great. We will come in and it's everything from data ingestion to like manipulating it, transforming it, doing whatever, and then creating products with it, whether that's a dashboard, an application, reports, graphics, anything like that. Like I say, it's a full service like solution to these problems. Um, a lot of people like that because it's very simple. You're not having to stitch together a bunch of different like tools and resources. Like, anyone that's been in the business for a long enough time knows that like that can be a real headache, right? It's fun to be able to make like a bespoke solution for whatever you're dealing with, but then somebody makes one change upstream, and then all of a sudden a huge portion of whatever it is that you do is broken, right? There's some sort of a incompatibility or whatever. You don't really run into that with the platform. And that's particularly helpful when you start looking at the federal side of things because there's just one ATO, one authority to operate, which means that you only have to get approval one time. You're not having to get each individual thing approved and then reviewed and then like reapproved. So like with that, like Palantir, the Foundry instance that they use for the different like agencies, it was one of the first ways to access AI inside of federal networks because it was underneath that umbrella. So it was kind of like an easy pass lane into the government. So people that were operating on it within the government were the first ones to be able to access it for the most part, right? I mean, sure, there were edge cases and stuff, but more like mainstream wise, I guess.
Yeah, super interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's just such an incredible tool to be able to work across, all these different data silos and like link and, come up with insights, be able to do things. It's really cool. And it's kind of a, preview of the future, like some of these agentic tools that you can use to, just tell it what to do, right? Hey, do this or let's come up with this solution. It's really
Well,
impressive.
so it's like you couldn't have designed it better for AI, right? Like if you were to travel back in time. So when they put it together, right, they call it an ontology, and it's essentially they call it the digital clone of your organization or whatever. And essentially what it is like anything with a noun is like an object type, and then you establish relationships between them and you feed your data into it, right? And so you can actually see this network of your organization flowing. And so like that was just a good way to organize things and to access it for, dashboards and whatever it was that they were making 5 years so years ago, right? But then with the immersion of AI or emergence of AI, it was like, well, what's the best way to get data into this model? Well, it's the ontology. It's like perfect. It already knows everything it needs to know about how the data works, how it fits together. It's kind of like perfect.
Yeah,
I don't know
it's
how else to say
crazy.
it.
And it's like, for the folks who are watching, this is super important stuff. At least I tell a lot of folks the way these AI tools are changing the game now. You're like there's gonna be could be different expectations in knowing how to use stuff like Palantir. Like it'll become more embedded in like job requirements or job postings. Because a person who knows how to use that tool can have like the impact of like 30 people or something, right?
Yeah, so a lot of times, like when I'm talking to clients about it, I'll explain that having the AI like model incorporated into what you're doing is almost like having a junior analyst, but like an infinite number of them, right? So one of the big roadblocks that you run into when you're dealing with like data platforms is you have to have an engineer or an analyst build it, right? And so then somebody comes through and they say, this dashboard's great, but I need a chart that does like this slightly different thing. And so then all of a sudden you're down for a cycle while some engineer has to go and rework this page. Every time like a leader or an executive gets a great idea, right? So with Palantir, we actually just implemented one of these solutions like yesterday. We take an AI model and we plug it into the same thing. We like train it up on all the data. We get it everything linked up. And so now our customer can just chat with it. And they can say, hey, give me a stat. Like, how many of these reports do we have? How many of them were submitted after noon? Give me a bar graph that shows that. Can you break it down into like a pie chart? Or give me a Gantt chart for all of our reporting, like just weird stuff like that. And it can do it all. Like, it's not going to replace a person, but it'll replace a very like basic person. So, like, none of our engineers have to deal with these menial requests anymore. It's all just
Yeah, they
done
can actually
for them.
they can do like actual engineering stuff.
Yeah, it's democratizing their data. I don't like that. I just use that term, but that's what it's doing. It's making it readily accessible to these people that otherwise wouldn't have been able to. And so now you have people that are like, I wouldn't say technically illiterate, but they very much struggle with computers, right? Like Excel is the extent of what they can do. But anyone can jump on a Slack channel and type a message real quick, right? So you give that to them inside their app and they're doing it right then and there. If For a lot of people, like they wouldn't even notice the difference between like just an engineer sending them graphs and like this chat doing it, if they weren't paying attention.
Yeah, yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. Um, what did you do beforehand in the army?
I was intelligence. So I grew up in a very small town with a lot of cows, and the way to get away was to join the military in some way. So I went intel, spent about 5 years with the reconnaissance, surveillance, and target acquisition squadron, and then I was done. And then I extended to deploy with my team because that's what you do. And then I was done. But then I re-enlisted to go to the Army Foreign Intelligence Directorate at the Pentagon, and then I was done. And then I got forcibly extended to go through a med board, and then I was actually done.
So how many years was that?
About 9, I think.
Yeah, I was about to say. I thought at first I heard 5, but I was like, wow, that'd be a lot to pack into 5 years.
No, no. So
Um,
I did 5 years down in like a tactical unit, and then
oh,
another 4 up at the Pentagon. So I kind
so
of got like both sides.
but you left because you got med boarded essentially.
The last time, yeah, but the first 3 times I was just done.
Mm.
Um, I mean, do you want to like actually talk about this right now? I'm not sure. Like, if we're just
Oh
leaving the
no, 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 no.
conversation.
I'm just like the military was like ending, and then it was like kind of like a sudden shift for you. So like, how did you like end up in this in this line of work? I guess is what I'm getting at. Not like
Sure.
the overall
Well,
like the overall specifics.
no. So like the first 3 times I was getting out, it was education, and I was gonna go like be an accountant or something. Uh, the last time when I actually did get out though, I just went straight into contracting, more or less doing the same stuff. And I bounced around the DoD doing that for like another couple years. And I did that as a contractor, and then I became a government civilian. And I did that for like literally one year. I think it was like 51 weeks and 5 days or something like that. and I couldn't take it anymore. It's just it wasn't fun. I liked going out and having adventures. Sitting in an office like that it felt weird. And so there was an opportunity with Amazon where they would take you and make you an engineer if you had like a decent amount of technical literacy and a clearance. So like I kind of fit that criteria, and I got lucky enough to get the call to go in. So I did that for about a year and a half. Um, but I went way too far to the tech side. You're talking about like infrastructure and stuff like that. And so at the end of that, I kind of took an inventory of what I had, like skill wise, and figured out what I could do with it. And that ended up being consulting. Um, so like a little bit of tech, but also with the data stuff, right?
Hmm.
And so that's when I kind of like started, I circled back to Palantir for the most part with this organization. And then I've kind of just been in that kind of orbit since.
Wow. Okay, cool. Yeah, no, I mean it's just like everybody has their own like kind of like story and how they ended up in the position they are. Um, so did you like being in Intel, did you use like a like did you were you able to gain some like technical literacy in the intelligence community? Or I mean I actually don't know, but it seems to me like that is something that could happen.
Sort of. I had to, like I actually started learning stuff as just a matter of practicality because we don't necessarily have all the tools you would need to process a lot of data, right? So like you would start making like Python scripts to just crunch this data and like pull out key things because otherwise you're just getting a bunch of plain text reports on like a TXT file, and you need something to get through that because you don't have enough people ever, especially when you're deployed. And then I started like I also had like really ridiculously complicated Excel sheets, just anything to come up with formulas to kind of process stuff. Um, but as time would go on, I would kind of go deeper and deeper with that stuff. And then, of course, like Palantir and other products like that started coming out, and so it's easy to kind of start moving toward that. Um, yeah. So I mean, I wouldn't say I was like a tech wizard or anything like that, but I had like that proficiency to where like, or I could start Googling my way through just about any problem.
Yeah, yeah, you kind of like, you had a skill and you like found like you found it like transferred easily to what like an organization would need. You just had to kind of like think about, maybe it's like easier in Intel because like you said, you're having to deal with like large amounts of like data that needs to be transformed, or some of it's unstructured that's like very similar to what you'd hear in like a corporate setting. Um, so well, I mean, like super cool to like hear all that. Yeah, and learning Python, like that's like such a skill if like you have it. Though, with stuff like Claude now, it's gonna be able to do a lot of that on its own. Which, like you said, democratizes it for everybody. Cool. Well, so now that now that you're like implementing solutions, like how different does that feel like day to day instead of like being in the military? Like how much of like an identity shift and like what transfers over to that?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of the soft skills do for sure. Especially like on the Intel side. So my job, I was advising like people that were in charge of patrols and stuff, going out and like doing stuff, finding targets, things like that. And so your job is to figure out what they need and then figure out what's going on out in the world and then kind of like help them do what they do but better, right? And so I mean that's what a consultant does.
Hmm.
And then even like the part where like I'm grossly
That's good.
underranked to be so like I had no rank at all, and I had to be telling these people that were like in command, you're doing your job maybe not as well as you could, right? So you have to learn how to kind of engage with people tactfully to communicate, things that they may not necessarily understand right away in a way that they can get. Um, and then to also communicate to like very like people that just aren't really like up to speed on a lot of things. They're very focused on like their lane. Um, in terms of how it differs from the day to day, I used Palantir while I was in as well, but more
Hmm.
so as a user. And I think like a good like analogy is a lot of people know how to operate a car, but not a lot of people know how to build it. And so when people talk about using Palantir while they're in the military, a lot of times what they're actually saying is, I used an application that was built on that platform, right? And that's a
Gotcha.
key distinction to make because a lot of the complexity has been abstracted away for you, right? Some engineers already come in and they've made a button to do whatever complicated thing it is you're trying to do. And that engineer is like, that's the like kind of what I do, right? You're the one that kind of comes in and sets up these mechanisms to make this stuff work.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's super important because like when we get resumes for our job recruiting platform, and we're trying to match folks with employers, right? Yeah, like there are a lot of things that say like, oh yeah, like proficient in Palantir, but like that could have like two different meanings, right? So what would you like, I guess like saying that you used like something built in Palantir and then you're looking for a job on the outside, or you want to, actually leverage like the platform is like, knowing how to build something. How would you like go about, on the first question, how would you go about like thinking how that transfers to an outside to a civilian job? And on the second one, how would you start to get those skills?
Sorry, I'm gonna find a very good time to interrupt. Yeah,
Oh, hey, Alex, thank you for joining.
yeah, I've been in here for about 10 minutes. I just was listening, sorry, so had a couple of technical.
Okay, well, I was giving Ray the business.
Oh yeah, he's
So,
definitely been holding the team down. But yeah, I mean, I can answer my perspective at least, and Ray by all means. But honestly, I think a lot of it correlates exactly, pretty much almost exactly the same. Like, sure, like your disciplines are different. We both came from an intelligence background, but like at the end of the day, data is data. And pretty much the only difference in my mind, at least, is like who the customer is. So, like the challenges in the intelligence community or with the military, or even like the healthcare system, like they all have their own unique challenges. But like at the end of the day, at least in my mind, data is data. And, so you're able to work with that.
yeah. Alex, why don't you introduce yourself since we didn't have the chance to hear from you just
Yeah,
yet.
sure thing. So apologies again. So, for joining late, but um, I was also an intelligence analyst. So just by happenstance, me and Ray had pretty much the same job in the military, but just because you have the same job doesn't mean you necessarily did the same thing. Um, but I basically enlisted in like 2018, and my first duty station was out in Fort Hood. I think they changed the name, but I think they also changed it back. But basically, I was with a armored reconnaissance squadron as a basically like tactical level analyst, just like guy on the ground. Um, did some pretty cool stuff. Did one deployment with them, flew some drones, did collection, and basically like just literally sleeping on the ground in the desert a couple times. Not very fun stuff, but like very good experience. That was also my first experience with Palantir in any way. I didn't really know anything about it before then, but basically they gave me this laptop and were like, "You need to learn this thing and know how to use it." I said, "Roger," and got pretty good at it. And thankfully, I had some good officers who basically told me like, if I want to be successful, know how to use your tools, and they gave me some time to be able to you know, learn like data literacy, pretty basic stuff. But I found out, I wasn't the most technical savvy person, but, you know, basically, if I spent a decent amount of time learning, I can just get pretty good at it, and I can apply those challenges to other things. But, um, you know, I spent 4 years in that environment, and I reenlisted in like 2020, I think it was, and spent 3 years in Northern Virginia. And that was at the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. I don't really know a lot about GeoInt, but it sounds fancy. My, I guess, niche is all source, which is basically all types of intelligence. But instead of having like those tactical level platforms, there's more strategic level focus. So that was pretty much like, I guess, everything was software, and got to see things at a very very big picture, and basically like fast forward a couple of years, was able to do some like data science training, not necessarily my job, but like I'll raise my hand and sign up for things, but um able to take lessons learned from what I learned at the tactical level and strategic level, and here I am now.
That's super cool. Yeah, no, I mean it's just everybody's like kind of path is different, right? But like you can kind of see some like similarities between your path and Ray's, and it's you know Intel obviously commonplace, but you also just had like a general interest in doing this sort of work, right? And you were self-taught, which is like really like a cool thing about tech.
Mm,
And like a lot of these software tools is you can just figure it out, right?
yeah.
There's infinite things and like, you know, I was like figuring out how to like we've been working to get our team here at Sitreps like using like some of the AI tools and everything and like actually like pulling stuff down from like GitHub and everything and like we can just find YouTube videos and teach folks how to do it and also
Yeah, I mean, literally, like, could you not, like, there is no like formal pathway, like YouTube, GitHub, even Reddit threads, like literally anything and everything. It's just hard work, dedication, some elbow grease, like a lot of
yeah.
migraines, but you know,
Yeah, so
So
a lot of people are like, how do I break into tech? It's like, well, you got to get, some of the skills and become familiar with, what that means. And I'm sorry.
yeah,
It sounds like you were saying something.
no, so just on that note and back to your original question, if someone wants to learn how to do this stuff, there's a couple ways. First, if you're still in the military, your branch has an instance of Palantir Foundry. They all give them the weird names, like Vantage and Vision, whatever. So there is one out there. You just have to look it up. And just about every service member will have an account provisioned for them. They just have to log in with their CAC. And if not, then they can probably get one, right? So check that out. Go ahead and do that. That's an important thing. Like if you don't do anything else and you're interested in Palantir, that's the move. If you're not in the military or for some reason you don't have access to your branch's instance, you can go to like Palantir Learn. They actually have a free tier. I'm not like a Palantir salesman, but they do have a free tier that will allow you to like practice in a sandbox, right? So you can mess around with the platform, see if you actually want to use this thing, right? That's a big thing with tech is personal preference and things that you like. So you don't want to like start applying to Palantir jobs and find out you can't stand it, right? Um, but the other part of that is, right, if you're coming up on like terminal leave or whatever it is, if you have 6 months, a year to like that point, if you jump on these systems right now, right, you can actually build practice applications. So when you come to sit down with somebody at an interview and talk, you can actually talk to them about the process, the pain, the headaches that you ran into from sourcing data to transforming it, translating it, and then creating some sort of a valuable product, right? It's a big difference from somebody that can just talk about how they know how to do like Python scripts and build charts.
Yeah, your kind of like portfolio of work is super important. It almost like everybody's an artist now. Gotta have like portfolio, you know.
Sure.
Yeah, but no, that's super cool. I had no idea like each branch they basically had an instance of I mean that's like insane. Like it's just oh, but look, what is the size of that contract? Like, you know,
10
um
billion for the army.
yeah, like it's just wild. Um could you I guess why would somebody, when we talk about like the competitive environment out there, why would somebody pick y'all instead of Palantir, for example, to do their implementation? There's so many like it's like, we're talking I don't know if like service members kind of understand like, you can hire consultants to teach you how to implement Workday, or something like that.
Well, I mean, I think there's a few things that come to mind for me, right? I think the big thing, like I mentioned earlier when we first started talking, is for the most part, everyone that I've talked to at Foxtrot, the job is not to like latch onto a company for 10
Mhm.
years and to just get money from them, right? It's to develop a meaningful solution and then move on. That in and of itself is like, I wouldn't say it's a novel business practice, but it's not common. Most people want to maximize the amount of value they get per like customer acquisition, right? So that in and of itself is a good value for the customer. Beyond that, we have a lot of former service members or former federal people. Like there's a lot of people that are coming from the industries that we're supporting that are now building these applications. And so there's a level of understanding that you don't necessarily get from somebody that's like just a computer science grad and knows how to like, they're a TypeScript wizard. Like sure they can build some great stuff, but they don't know what it's like to be sitting in an outpost somewhere, like trying to like pull things together. There's a certain kind of like value that you get with that sort of insight. Same with like just communicating with the customer and being able to like really help them understand what they need. Because a lot of times as a consultant, that's your heaviest lift is figuring out what a customer wants. Like they think they know, but they don't really know. They have an idea, they have a direction. And so you, as the expert, need to kind of walk them down that path. So having that background is huge. Yeah, I think that's Alex.
No, I mean, at least one of the last parts you mentioned really resonated. Like, honestly, I didn't think a lot of this would be like guiding customer intentions. I kind of thought they would know exactly what they want, but really, that's not the case a lot of times. So, my case, I kind of just defaulted to like what I've seen, and like in real life. Things sound good on paper or like in school, but like in real life, that might be a different case.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, there's nothing like just doing it live, right? And like running into like, because it's never just like you're not just fighting the technology, you're also fighting the people too, right? And everybody's got their own opinion, and influencing folks is super important. Um, so we're at like 27 minutes. I still have more questions to ask, but if anybody has, wants to ask Ray or Alex any questions, you can like raise your hand here or drop a question in the chat and I could ask it. They can read the chat as well. So, um, but I'll Ray, it sounded like you're finishing up a thought there. I just wanted to give that announcement so folks wanted to ask questions they could.
sure. I'm not sure. I think one thing that what Alex was just talking about just now with having to like figure things out. That's one of the reasons why veterans do so well in consulting, is because a lot of times you're just kind of thrown into the deep end of the pool and told to figure things out. I mean, I feel like that's a pretty common experience for most people. You're just given an objective and asked to kind of figure things out. And so with consulting, it feels a lot like that. You generally know that somebody wants to like reduce the time it takes for, something to happen or to increase the amount of something that happens, and that's about it. And so being able to kind of work through that ambiguity to like feel your way through the dark and kind of deliberately develop a plan that makes sense, it's a hard skill to get. And when it's drilled into you through like that military lifestyle, it sticks with you. And so that's an advantage that you'll have over a lot of computer science grads. They'll come out of school, they're very technically capable, but they're always asking for permission. You'll give them a task, they'll do it, and then they'll come back and like, what's next? But
Treating
if
it
you
like
have
an
it like,
assignment.
yeah, but if you have like a veteran, a lot of times you'll give them a task, they'll go execute, and then they'll anticipate a follow-on task. And so that kind of proactive like engagement where it's invaluable with this kind of work, especially with like an organization like Foxtrot, where they're trying to be lean and agile. And so you don't have a team of 40 people going out to do a problem. They send an inappropriate amount of people. And so everyone needs to be able to be positively contributing to that mission, whatever it might be.
I think that's a good segue. Another question I had, which was, oh, we do have a question. Okay. If you were starting over, figuring it out, knowing what you know now, what would you do differently? What tools had the most impact for you? Thank you, Luke.
I mean, I think tool tech wise, nothing. Uh, that sounds arrogant, but it's not. It's just you'll find when you go and you get into tech and you start doing something, anytime you go to a new place, you're gonna have to learn a new stack for the most part, right? Unless you're just a pure Palantir person. But even then, organizations vary so much. I think if I had to do anything differently, it would be just being more ambitious earlier on, like almost audacious, taking bigger swings. There's gonna be a lot of people that like reject you in your professional life. That's just part of the business, but you shouldn't be one of them. And like so many people kind of just foreclose on opportunities for just because they think like their background isn't enough or whatever. But then you get to these places, right? Like your Fangs, your top tens, whatever, and you look around and you're like not very impressed. And that's not to like denigrate anybody. It's just to say like you're also probably pretty decent, right? Um, yeah.
I think I
Yeah.
think I think I think grit has like and just like pure tenacity of just like pulling yourself through roadblocks is such like an underrated, skill, right? Like if you're able to serve in the military and you like did your job, like you're already like a smart person, Like you can figure this stuff out. Like so you just got to have the wherewithal to be able to, run through some walls and get it done. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
I mean,
I'm sorry.
No, I was basically just gonna say definitely don't downplay yourself. Like my IT tech experience was basically like, did you turn it on and turn it back off again? And then like a couple years later, like also do what you enjoy. Like I started modding video games a little bit because I like playing video games. And then all of a sudden, a couple years later, now I'm coding on Palantir software. So like you just got to start with the basics, but do what you enjoy.
When when Foxtrot is like evaluating like a vet first off, how big is Foxtrot? I actually don't know.
Up to I think 60 people, something like that. I think Zach would probably be able to say.
Yeah,
That
Yeah,
is not.
it's in the 60s. Yeah. It's about it's a little over 2 years old.
Okay, cool. So when Foxtrot is evaluating like a veteran candidate, like like what sort of signals like stand out to y'all? Like the you view as like positive hiring signals where you're like,
yeah.
okay, this is a person I would want to work with.
Me, I personally, I think of like three things. I think problem ownership, systems thinking, and user empathy. And I guess like what I mean by problem ownership is like, you know, did you just use it or like did you own a problem and like drive a solution? Like, were you a part of making things happen? And by systems thinking, like how do these things connect? Not just what am I using, but like how's this used in the field and how are decision makers looking at it? User empathy is like basically what it's like to use the tool, like your frustrations as a user versus the engineer who might not know your job whatsoever but just paid to do that. Like you actually understand the thing. So those three things stick out for me personally.
Super cool. Um, Ray, did you have anything you wanted to add? I mean, those all ownership and like just, is such a big thing, just being proactive.
Yeah, I mean, well, first off, everyone should know that like having a clearance isn't a big deal anymore. It was like 20 something years ago when contracting was wild, and it's this weird like misconception that's just been perpetuated. Sorry. I think now the more appropriate way to think about it is like it's a certification, right? Like Security Plus, where it's like a requirement to have a job, but it's not an advantage really for you. Unless you're like full scope, then of course, like that's a different conversation. Uh, in terms of tech stuff, I don't really look for anything specific to like tell me that somebody's good at what they do. Um, a lot of people think they need to be like an expert at something, but I actually think it's better to be more of a generalist on a platform like Palantir, where you want somebody that's able to kind of go through the full like product line, right? You want somebody that can ingest data, transform it, handle it, move it around, and then create something useful with it. A lot of people will dive deep onto like one specific thing where it's just like they make workshop applications or they make spreadsheets or something. It's just not, you want to be more of a generalist, I think. Having said that, there are some tech heavy aspects of the platform that are of like real high value. Code repos, the ability to make your own custom like actions and functions, and the developer console, right? That's Palantir as a general like platform is very like they make it easy for you to not use code to do stuff, right? It's a lot of like low code, no code stuff, but there are those like high code solutions, and those do two things. One, it indicates a high level of technical proficiency, right? Like you're just that person. You can really like do something, but it also indicates that you can develop like a more sophisticated solution. You're not going to give me a cookie cutter application that kind of just looks like the same thing everyone else does and mostly works. You're going to be able to give us something that's perfectly tailored to whatever that customer needs. That can be huge.
Yeah, the combination of like engineer plus, agentic tools is extremely powerful. Like the sort of things they can rip through is insane. But yeah, like also just the basic kind of blocking and tackling, right? Of like knowing how to use repositories and then understanding like a tech stack, super important stuff, but also things you can learn like tonight if you wanted to. Like all sorts of people on YouTube, you just watch and just be like, oh shit, it's all here. Um, Super cool. Are there any other questions anybody want to ask anything? I'll just keep talking and we can just keep having a conversation. But I think these guys are super interesting. So feel free to shoot away. This doesn't have to just be me running my mouth. Um, what do you guys think is like? Actually, no. I do want to ask a different question. Like, how does one get a job at Foxtrot? Like, do they got to network in? Do they got to apply in? Like, how would somebody go and find like a? Because you often hear vets will be like, I don't even know like where to start. Like, how'd you go and even find like a company like Foxtrot to work at?
So it depends on what you want to do. But for Foxtrot specifically, a lot of people find it through the Palantir website. They're on the list of partners. And generally, if you're interested in like a specific platform, a partner is a good place to go if you don't want to work for the platform itself. Um, that's how you know somebody's like reputable and reliable and probably going to be around for a while. Like they don't just like put people on there just because. Um, Beyond that, having a network and talking to people, I mean, people always say that, but networking's hard. But just being around, seeing stuff like this. I mean, the website itself has the postings on there, right? If you start just looking around, you'll see it. Um, the career fairs and stuff can be pretty good. But it's kind of hit or miss with a lot of those things. A lot of like the contractors that you'll run into around the installations you're at are very like they're just kind of there. It's like a check the box exercise. Usually it's better to kind of like meet somebody in another capacity.
What about like doing projects on your like side time and like because there's communities of like online developers and stuff
Yeah.
and like you could meet you could meet and grow with people there and like might be able to find like somebody's like hey we're looking to hire somebody because you have those skills.
Yeah, no, I
Um,
mean that's a big thing. Sorry, I is were you done?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that's a big thing. Like, so Palantir has a pretty big community of practice, and it's at a weird stage because the platform itself is really entering like the mainstream, and so it's starting to get like a bigger following. So you'll have, like, one, you have like websites like Ontologize, right? It's a forum for you know, Foundry solutions and stuff, right? And so people will post questions there, and then you'll have people interacting. And I know people that have found jobs there or found leads to jobs because the community is still relatively small. And so you're like, there's a lot of like just third party networking and stuff that'll happen if you're active. And then same with building your applications and things like that. If you start talking and asking people for help, there's a lot of helpful people in the community that are willing to engage. And so you'll start seeing the same names pop up over and over again. And it's just an easy way to like organically build a relationship. It doesn't feel as gross as like what you see normal tech networking. Like, it's not, you're not trying to sell or exploit somebody. You just get to know somebody like you would in real life. And at some point, they actually just help you just because.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because so much of like a lot of this is like collaboration and trying to figure out ways to solve problems, right? And like it's part of that like online open source community where you're able to talk about it and figure it out. And so it's like it's a really valuable thing to have as somebody who works in tech is that you have a resource like that. Um, so we talk about education, right? Like on one hand, we said a lot of this can be self-taught. And we've pumped that a lot. Do you think like having like a computer science degree, because you said, oh, if you have technical skills, plus you have these tools, right? You're like supercharged. So do you think having like a more hard degree, like a CS degree, would be helpful in this? Or do you think like somebody should just jump right in to start learning the platform?
Me
Both.
personally, I feel like
Um,
it's not like completely, it's not necessary by any means. Like, I know some of the best coders I've ever met, like, don't have a degree in computer science whatsoever. But like, it's usually because they're passionate and doing their free time and they've taught themselves and spent a lot of time on that. But like, it definitely helps for sure. And like, gives you a little bit of experience in like different coding languages and that kind of stuff. But computer science, as far as I know, like there's probably not any schools out there that are going to teach you Palantir specific, but like Palantir is inclusive of different programming languages. So, um, but it'll definitely help. So if you're not sure, I had no idea what I wanted to do for college, but one of my friends was pretty successful in computer science, and I'm like, okay, screw it, give it my best shot, and it paid off for me personally. But it is what you make of it.
yeah, I don't have a computer science degree. And I was able to work at Amazon as an engineer. I was able to be a consultant, operations manager, and now an engineer here again at Foxtrot. You don't need it, but it can help. So for me, the way I look at education from like just a opportunity perspective, education is a great way to bridge the gap between the experience that you have and what they want you to have. It's kind of like that connection. And the same for certifications, but to a lesser extent. I look at certifications more suspiciously because a lot of times people will just cram for a week, take the test, and then do a brain dump and not come back for a year or three. Um, but
100%.
having that education down can be helpful in other ways, though. So, like, if I could go back again, I did business and then an MBA. If I could go back, I would do a CS degree for my undergrad because it gives you that academic understanding that'll help you build up momentum faster. So, like, if you ever run into somebody that's self-taught when they're programming and they start running into issues, it becomes more frustrating for them just because they don't understand, like, at a necessarily a conceptual level. They haven't ran into that specific issue yet. And so you're kind of like groping around in the dark. And like one of the biggest issues they'll have is they just don't know the specific nomenclature to Google because for whatever reason they just haven't like figured out like the name of that data type or whatever. They just know what it looks like. And so there's a lot of like weird little issues like that. But I mean, you don't need it.
I guess that's the good thing about having like AI tools now is you can literally just like take a screenshot of the problem and be like, explain this to me, and it will.
Sort
I
of,
mean,
right?
not gonna
Until it
lie.
tells you the wrong thing.
Yeah.
True.
It,
True. They are probabilistic models and they
yeah.
make
Well, so we're actually seeing issues with that stuff, right? There's larger organizations around right now that have had major service outages because
yeah.
they pushed something and then they didn't realize it was not quite ready.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so you as a person, like it's even more dangerous, right? Because you don't have the safety net of like a $1 billion corporation's momentum. You're just a person that screwed up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's gonna be wild times with all these agents, and people are gonna be like, yeah, sure, why not? Just give it full control of, whatever system, it'll be okay. Which this is actually a good segue into, I think, the AI future. So like as far as like AI careers, like, Foxtrot is obviously deep in the Palantir platform. From where y'all sit, like do you like what do you kind of view as like real and like what's hype when it comes to, AI and like where would a veteran kind of fit in that space if that question even makes sense?
No, for sure. I
So
mean, for me, I just like big picture, like, AI is definitely super overused word right now, especially in like the past year or two or whenever ChatGPT came out. But I feel like it's misunderstood for sure. Like there are very there's good strong points, but and it's not magic. Like once you actually understand and deconstruct how things work, like you were saying, algorithmic, like there's a reason how and why it computes a certain output, but like data hallucination is a real thing. But and instead of thinking about it as like a human replacement, thinking about like an augmentation, or like Ray was saying earlier in the meeting, like it might be a good junior analyst or something to that level. But uh, there's some really good things about AIP that I think Ray can probably speak to on.
Awesome.
no, is that the okay? um, I mean, I think it's really easy to identify the things that are like hype, right? It's just they're superficial applications. Somebody took an existing product, slapped AI on it, and the only increase in value of that offering is the association with the letters. Um, that's you don't really see anything like that at Foxtrot with the stuff we do. That's not like me being a company man. It's just by the nature of the work we do, right? We were talking about it earlier, how the ontology is perfect for AI integration, and it really is, right? So we'll take a model, put it into like existing workflows, their pipelines, whatever, and it makes it faster, it makes it produce more, it makes it produce better, right? So like bigger, faster, better, like those are all things that are like business wins. And so it's really easy to measure that value, but you also start looking at like the way that it's going to improve things in the future. I think like right now we're at the base level, right? It's just kind of like web 1.0 almost. Nobody knows what like the future web is going to look like where it gets homogenized and it all kind of looks the same because everyone's figured it out. And so that makes it a well, we're going to be changing the way that people do business, right? Like there's some weird angle use case where somebody's going to do it and it's going to click for everyone and say like, oh, well, that's a brilliant way to do things. You're not just doing what we do, but better. It's a better way of doing things altogether. And I think that's something that kind of sets the table up for veterans to be successful, right? Especially those that are entering the market right now, right? everyone sees this AI stuff, they hear about it, and they're like, oh my God, we are so far behind. It's cutting edge technology, but it's not true because it's new, right? It's cutting edge technology. So nobody can be that far ahead of anyone. We're all kind of figuring it out together, right? It's a great time to jump in. And I think what we were talking about earlier with the not unreliability of AI, but the sometimes precarious nature of it is being a veteran, you're really well positioned to kind of to manage that, right? Because most of you will have been leaders. You'll have had soldiers or sailors or whatever that are they're good at what they do, but sometimes they can misbehave. They need to be kept an eye on. And so you're able to kind of like be cognizant of that, right? A lot of people that are like just pure CS grads, right? They come out of it and they have so much faith in this stuff, and then they just, like things explode. But being able to approach a problem and then again, like from that military leader perspective, you break it up into really small things, and that's the kind of stuff that AI thrives with, right? Is not like this big huge task here, replace this senior engineer. It's no, here's a very small task that I would give like a very new junior engineer. Do that and come back and let me know what's happening. You're already used to doing that stuff. You're really well equipped for it. You just have to type it instead of yell it.
I love it. Um, yeah, let me have a question. Very salient points. I I learned a lot. So, I mean, I think it's just like, I like to use the word like frontier tech, a lot unironically now because, with AI and like the different applications of it, it's like, you know, I I remember when the iPhone came out, maybe I'm dating myself here, like back in 2008 when I graduated college, the prestigious United States Military Academy. And I was like, what the fuck are we gonna use this for? Like I didn't even like know. I was like, okay, so it's kind of like a BlackBerry, like the concept of like just having like a trillion applications on it and like it being like an extension of your arm just like wasn't there for me because it was not something I had like ever encountered before, or really nobody had ever encountered before, right? And that's going to be the same thing with AI, right? Like it's impossible to know what we're going to do with it versus what we're doing with it right now, right? So I mean, it's who knows in 10 years what it's going to look like. It's just, but you can go out there and, create some of the new stuff, which is really cool, and you have this like amazing tool to use it. Um, okay, and we have a question from Nelson. Thank you. It says international relations degree major, still in college, learning Spanish, Portuguese, and will be fluent in Russian by graduation. Wow. Um, Studying for Security Plus, is this enough for defense tech like Palantir, or do I need to get further education, graduate in 2028?
No, I mean, you wouldn't be far off from where I was when I got into it. I mean, like the languages and stuff, that actually might be an asset because there's a decent chance that you'd be able to find an organization that has a Palantir application they're working on that specifically requires some sort of translation. Like, there's all sorts of like little skills like that, little offshoots where it actually circles back into something that you're looking for. But yeah, like I said, I studied business. Like, that's about as far from tech as anything else. I'm a fraud. I have a Sec Plus degree or certification and some experience. People gave me a chance.
Yeah, I would add, Nelson, that you can actually go to learn.palantir.com and they have like certifications like building a workshop and things like that you can use on a free instance. And you can add that to your LinkedIn profile. And recruiters for places like Foxtrot, we have one in the call actually, that source these people. They'll look for things like that. So if you get those certifications and add them to your profile, you'll be one of the few, believe it or not, that actually have that. So that's a lot of value add.
Super cool. All right. Any other questions here? We got a little under 10 minutes left. Want to give Ray and Alex a break here, Frank, because are y'all on the East Coast?
East Coast, yeah.
Yeah, so it's almost 10 o'clock for y'all. Okay, so I actually don't want to keep them here really much longer if it's going to be that close to 10 o'clock for them. So any other questions, or does everybody feel like they got what they wanted out of it? Ray, Alex, maybe kind of like closing words here, any pieces of advice for everybody listening. I think we kind of hit most of the questions.
No, I mean, just if you want to do it, start building stuff. We already talked about it. It's
Yep.
free and you can do it from home. Like, it doesn't have to be from your work computer, right? Like, if you're just sitting there somewhere, go build an app and then talk to a recruiter about it.
Yeah, that's actually like shockingly like that's really good advice. It's like as long as you can point to something like, look, because they want to see how you mentally unpack a problem. And if you can say like, look, this is the way I approached the problem, versus like they don't know anything else about you, what would you'd probably, go with the person like, oh, I like the way you approach the problem.
Yeah, I mean, it's more like conversational than anything. Like,
Yeah.
especially like Foxtrot, it's not a traditional tech company in the sense that like they're not going to hit you with 40 interviews and then like a bunch of leak code tests or something. It's conversational, get a feel for your technical proficiency, and then figure things out.
Do you think the bigger consulting firms, right, are gonna like start to go after that market, or are they already there?
No, I mean, there's definitely competition, right? And Palantir, like I said, it's growing. It's in the mainstream. There's a $10 billion contract in the Army, another one for the Air Force. Like, it's all over the place, and a lot of big companies in like the private sector are also doing this. So the signal's there that like you need to get into this market if you're in the tech business. And a lot of like the smaller boutiques are actually being acquired by bigger consulting companies. It's happening. Instead of having to build out their own practice, they're just buying one. So
Yeah.
I mean, that in and of itself is a signal that like this is a good place to be. Like,
Yeah, I mean, I worked at PwC for a few years, and I could just see them salivating about like, wow, if we had this. I mean, I don't know if they have that capability now. I imagine they probably do because they're, usually abreast of what's going on. But yeah, it just seems to me to be like such a fertile like thing for a consulting firm to sell, and it's probably what they'll transform into eventually. Um, is like this business process, business transformation. Oh, we have another question. Do you have experience with the Skill Bridge program? Is that something people even use? I think that's what it means.
yeah.
Um,
So if you can do it, do it. Like, it's like using your GI Bill. Like, you already can do it, so you should. It's like just leaving money out there for some reason. Like, you 100% should do the skill bridge program, even if the company that you land or whatever is not the ideal one. Just get out there and try it. See, like, get that experience, get away from your unit. Um, like, more often than not, when I've seen those happen, it's not like an internship, it's a 6 month job interview. Very rarely do people not get those jobs. And if they don't, they're still in a much better position to get one somewhere else. And they didn't have to sit around their unit for 6 months.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things that's underutilized, and I wish I took advantage of. But to my understanding, there's like different time frames, like 6 months, 3 months, 90, like whatever. But definitely worth taking advantage of and get your foot in the door somewhere.
yeah, 100%. Well, cool. Any more questions, folks? We have them for another 5 minutes if we want, but I also don't want to keep them here because I know it's late for them. Going once, twice. Okay, cool. All right. Well, thank you, Ray and Alex, so much. I learned a lot. This is actually really incredible just to learn more about like the, ecosystem consulting, how, and how this is changing and just your roles and backgrounds, for super interesting stuff. And like appreciate the Foxtrot team for showing up here. So yeah, I hope everybody has a good night and, you can reach out to them on LinkedIn if you want. And we will see you all at the next webinar.
Thank you for having us.
Yep.
Thank you.